So, welcome to Art a la Carte, the online show where we look at artworks in the museum from an unexpected perspective. My name is Amanda Bain Garcia, and I'm the head of museum experiences at the Fred Jones Jr. Museum of Art. I'm coming to you from Norman, Oklahoma, and joining me today is our special guest, Adrien Broom. Adrien, welcome to the show. Where are you joining us from?
Right now, I'm in Guilford, Connecticut.
Nice. All right. So, Adrien, I'm just thrilled to have you with us to talk about your work, Colorful Dream, currently on display in the museum. I just want to share with everyone a little bit of your backstory. You're an award-winning photographer, set designer, and filmmaker based in New York City and Connecticut, drawing upon a multidisciplinary background in animation, fine art, photography, and decorative arts. You create intricate handcrafted sets that transport viewers to fantastical realms, exploring the intersection of nature and fantasy. I know this is really important to you, so I want to make sure to mention to everyone that you very intentionally work without computer-generated imagery or AI, meticulously constructing physical sets that invite viewers into tangible, imaginative worlds. Your practice spans gallery and museum exhibitions, commercial projects, private commissions, and conceptual portraiture, all unified by your consistent artistic vision and creative philosophy. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get to it. So we're going to begin by looking at the exhibition Colorful Dream, and we'll get into some exciting components of the show created especially for our museum. For our listeners and viewers, this just shows you here to give you an idea of the layout of the exhibit that's put together in kind of this circular format in the center of our special exhibit gallery. So, Colorful Dream is a series of photographs that tells the story of a young girl who wakes up from a deep sleep and all the color has disappeared. As you walk through the exhibit, you see the girl rediscovering each color as she explores worlds saturated with just one color at a time. There are multiple photographs of each color, but this is meant just to give you a sampling of what those images look like. Adrien, I have so many questions for you. Um, but I think a good place to start is how long did this series take you to complete? And if you can kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, it was definitely a multi-year project. Um, and my process for this was each world I would like example when I was starting off with the white world where all the colors had disappeared. I For inspiration, I would kind of, do some research about what do I think of white. And this is the thing I love about this project so much is it was very simple and it had so many layers. And my first thought is when you think of white, what do you think of? And it's the story of a young girl's journey. So a lot of it is very childlike. So chef hats and white mice and like Apple computers back then were all really white and all these things. And I would have a general sketch of what I wanted to do, and then I would put it out into my community, whether that was on social media or emails or anything. And I would or my friends or out to dinner and just ask everyone, what do you think of when you think of white or green or whatever I was working on at the time? And then I would compile all those thoughts. And then I would go to work sourcing all this material. As you can see in the behind the scenes, I had two assistants that worked with me for I think it was almost 5 years. It was a little over 4 years that we did this project. And these two were with me the whole time. And we would source from everywhere, whether it was, prop houses or, stuff people were giving away, or there's also baked goods in every single one of these because there's a baker that's a friend of mine. She was really excited to be involved. So, like the yellow world, she brought all these little yellow tarts. And, it was a very fun project of just collecting all these pieces. And once we had everything, then, the real work began. You get into the studio and you build this set. It was 3 walls, and every scene we built within the same 3 walls, and we would take maybe 4 or 5 days to put it together. And then we would shoot in one day. And then we broke it down. And every time we broke it down, it was a little heartbreaking because it's this wonderful fantasy world that you just get to live in for as long as you're building it and you're shooting it. So that was kind of the process of putting this whole thing together.
How fascinating. It's interesting that you said, how hard it was to actually kind of break them down when they were finished. I'm wondering, that had not occurred to me, but it makes so much sense. But is there one that was like particularly that you really wanted to hang on to that was like the most difficult to reimagine?
Honestly, there was a but so the purple, funny
Yeah.
enough, was the most time consuming one because if you look in the top corner there, the wisteria we made by cutting out, I mean, it's one of those projects where you learn as you go along. And afterwards, there was like, there must have been an easier way to do that. But we cut out all these circles and that took forever. And I bought something like 50 pounds of purple glitter to cover the floor. So there's still purple glitter in my car, in the building of the studio, everywhere. But I think honestly, the rainbow one was probably the one that was hardest to take down because it was the last one. And, this little girl, she's not a little girl anymore, and we are still actually pretty close. But I saw her grow up from ages 6 to 10 or 11. That's a big physical change, emotional change, everything. And it was just kind of very sad, the last set. It was a magical project to just completely immerse yourself in. I loved it. And I love being able to share it with everyone now in these different places. So I'm really grateful to the museum for giving me a platform for it.
Absolutely. Well, we've just really loved sharing it with everyone and seeing everybody's responses and how much it's been so well received. And I think everybody just kind of feels this magic that you created. It definitely comes across well. So okay, something we do need to talk about for sure. So Colorful Dream, it's a traveling exhibit that's shown in multiple venues across the country. Although here at FJJMA, we have something special that you won't see anywhere else. So hidden behind these walls is a brand new installation Adrien created just for us called The Black World. Adrien, I do want to ask you, obviously, a couple of things about this. But I guess, my first and most obvious question is why black and what kind of led you to that choice?
Well, when the museum reached out about building a component specifically for you, I was thrilled. And I kind of went through a few different ideas, some of them being prisms, some of them being more of like a light installation and this and that. And then, after going through more of my like creative brainstorming process, black just made the most sense. And I've been thinking about this idea for years that I would do another world many years later made entirely of black. And I love the concept of a black world. I kind of mentioned this in the writing on the wall, um, that I don't view black as like the absence of color. I feel like it's all the colors are coming together and there's so much depth and there's so much the question what lies within this color. And we were talking about it before too, but the it's lit in a very specific way where we did bring in the element of a light installation and it's a bit dark in there. And I love that it takes you a minute to kind of adjust and be able to see all of the objects that we chose to make up this part of the installation. And some of it you almost can't tell, and your imagination takes over by seeing what you see because it is a little dark. And when we were first putting it together, someone mentioned, is this too dark? Are people going to be able to see this? And I think that that's kind of the point is that it does make your imagination go on its own. I'm not feeding you everything. And then I wanted to add the crystals in, which are actually prisms. So on the floor, speckled around are rainbows. And I love the idea of the shadow and the light working together in this magical way to kind of bring to life this piece. I love
I
it.
love that too.
Speaking
Yeah.
of things, I'll
So
be
I'm
very sad to take down this one. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, we're all gonna be sad. Like there it'll be more than just you. But so it's really interesting because the whole feel and the mood of like the black center when you come into this part in the exhibit is such a great contrast to the really colorful images going on the outside of the walls as you walk around the outside of that circle. So just a few weeks ago on the show, we had Dr. Barrett, who is a dream psychologist. And when she was looking at the images of the Black world, she kind of interpreted it a little bit as maybe it could be indicative of your subconscious. And that she kind of saw the tree as almost more like roots, and that we're looking at something underground and cave-like. And when she saw the crystals, she kind of saw them as almost like stalactites, that hang from the ceiling in
Totally.
caves, like hanging off the branches like that. So I'm just kind of curious, what are your thoughts about her interpretation?
Well, first of all, I love hearing people's interpretation of my work because even though it is very narrative and you can follow a story, I don't do a lot of written word with it. And so you can kind of interpret it anyway. And that's kind of part of the art that I love so much, whether it's this project or my other work, is people kind of getting sucked into a narrative and them having their own story from it. And I love her interpretation of it. So that's amazing. I love the idea of it's the subconscious. I was definitely thinking of it kind of teetering between the part of the installation that lies on the floor. In my brain, it is kind of roots, but it's also shadows. And I almost pictured them a little having a little bit of movement. This is actually another part of my process, is whether it was the images that I took, the photographs, or this installation. Like I said, I build or I gather all of the materials. So when I was working on this, I was working with my team to build the tree and what that was going to look like, and then gathering all of the objects. And then we brought them into the museum, and I had a very vague idea of what I wanted to do, but I feel like most of it for me, a lot of my like creative play or creative magic happens spontaneously, and I feel like that works for me, and I really enjoy that as long as I have a general plan so you don't get panicked. But to actually create on site and kind of feel, how the space feels and what this feels, and just like things kind of like come to you out of nowhere. I wasn't actually planning the shapes on the ground. That was something that kind of was inspiration on site. And they all are symbolic of different things. Some of them are actual shadows of the objects that are in front of them. Like this image that we have right here, right in like the one right in the middle is the tree. And right to the left is a witch's hat. And I think after that is kind of an exaggerated shadow of the bear figure. And then there's other ones that aren't part of the installation. But yeah, that was one of my favorite parts. And I also feel a little bad for the museum because I'm sure those must be a huge pain to all keep steady, because they're just like little pieces of mulch, of rubber mulch, that I kind of sculpted to make these shapes and how I felt. But it seems to look exactly the same, so I'm very impressed. I thought all the kids would get excited and kick them around,
Yeah,
which would
actually,
be
you
kind of
do.
cool too, honestly. It
Yeah.
would be interesting to see how it evolves throughout the run of the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, then you might be disappointed to hear that it's actually stayed together and no one has really touched anything that we've seen or moved things
That's
around.
amazing.
I know. I think we were kind of curious about that too, especially there are some feathers in some spots, which here actually I'll show everyone. So speaking of the shadows, this was definitely one of my favorite parts as well, especially when one of my colleagues pointed out to me that you had recreated this Mary Poppins scene in the feathers and the mulch on the ground. And it was such a like lovely surprise when she showed it to me. I was not expecting to see that at all. And now I can't see anything else but that when I go in there.
Yeah.
And I totally want to like get a piece of chalk and outline on the floor every time I'm there. But you can see in this photograph that there are feathers there also. And I remember the staff members here at the museum, we were sort of curious, like, would those sort of move around on their own as people were going around the tree? Would it, would it catch in the air? And I don't think they've moved all that much, but you told me something interesting the other day about the feathers. I'm wondering if you could kind of share that, because I was curious if they had been placed, on purpose, kind of like the mulch had been, or, what was your thought with the feathers?
No, the feathers, I felt, especially like what they symbolize and what they are, I wanted them to have a real organic feel. So we literally threw them into the installation, and most of them lay where they landed, which I really loved. And I was kind of wondering, because there is a lot of air in there, and I was wondering if they would kind of shift, with the movement of the air of the room, which I also really loved as kind of part of this piece. I also love that they are still where they landed. So yeah, that was a very organic um, part of the creative process.
Love it. I wish we had, I'm thinking now, like, I wish we had captured that. I'm picturing you in the exhibit space, just like throwing feathers around. Like,
It
I
was
wish we
really
had
fun.
caught that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
this installation. It was a lot of fun to bring to life. Sometimes, as everybody knows that creates anything, sometimes it's not fun, and it's
Mm.
kind of torture and it just doesn't work. Um, but this one really worked working with the team at the museum. It just kind of we got into that flow and it just kind of put together, and it was a wonderful collaboration with Brad and the rest of the team there. But I hope that that kind of shows through when you go and see it, because this work itself is meant to be a little bit escapist and kind of put you in, a sense of imagination and comfort. Um, and I felt that way, while I was building this installation on site. So
Absolutely.
even though it's a
Yeah.
black world, which can feel very intimidating, I hope that it, kind of translates. I mean, even if it is intimidating, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I think it was probably a bit of a tightrope for you to walk, because something that is all about things that are black and dark, and it can just automatically carry with it something that can be a little negative or heavier, but it doesn't, yours does, it still carries the whimsical nature that all the
Playful.
other color photographs have. So I think it's really well done, and probably very difficult to actually do that. Um, so yeah, so in this space, not only do we have shadows, but we also have objects that you can kind of really distinguish only sometimes because of their silhouette. Like you can see with the little tiny animals that are traversing across the branches of the tree. And you also have, so again, you're writing on the wall, on the panel in the exhibit space. You talked a little bit about the crystals, where you say, and I just love this sentence you wrote: the tree, ancient and unyielding, stands as a bridge between worlds where shadow and shimmer exist as one. And I think that's so lovely, the idea of dark and light, and that you were able to capture that with those two things. Um, and I was in there the other day trying to take photographs, which was very hard to do because I'm not a
I know,
photographer.
sorry.
No, no,
I'm a
you're fine.
photographer and I was struggling trying to capture this on film.
Oh, I can imagine. But it's really nice when you're in there, and if you spend time, like you have to make yourself slow down. Um, Occasionally I caught like a reflection from one of the crystals would like travel across either like something I was looking at or on the floor, and it would just randomly happen and not very often. So like you kind of had to be there to see it occur, which I just really found also another nice surprise. I was not expecting that at all.
This installation, the longer that you spend there, the more you will see, because there's a ton of tiny little objects and your eyes need to adjust. Like I said, it's a little dark. And the more you adjust, the more you see, including the light, including these like little rainbow shimmers on the floor that you don't initially see when your eyes aren't adjusted to the dark. And I love that connection and contrast.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I'm Adrian, I was curious. It seems like maybe, and I might be wrong, but it seems like maybe you do a fair amount of writing in conjunction with your work. I'm curious if that's part of your practice at all.
Yeah, well, the writing is how I come up with my ideas usually. So I have my kind of creative process, no matter what project I'm doing, is I'm an avid meditator. I meditate every morning, and then after that, I try to do 3 pages of just kind of nonsense writing. Like, it doesn't have to sound good. It could end up being a grocery list or something I forgot to say to my sister, or, whatever it is. But eventually, usually, if I'm working on something, my brain will subconsciously just start streaming ideas related to that project. And then that's usually where a spark happens, where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then if there's something that really holds me, the next day I'll just free write on that concept. And usually that's just how my creative ideas like find their path. Um, and then once I'm very clear about what I'm trying to say and visually like what I'm trying to accomplish, then I kind of go into production mode. I'm sure, as you can tell, there's a lot of production that goes into these, and a lot of people. I love collaborating. I always think my work is better when you get other people's eyes and talents involved, whether it's a baker or I have some people that helped me kind of stage a lot of this stuff. But yeah, then production mode and then actual creation mode. So it's definitely, there's a lot of different stages to putting together this type of work. But I enjoy all the stages, but writing is definitely where it's all birthed.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I can totally picture that. And it's a neat because kind of the way you work feels very organic. And there's a lot of like decision making that happens in the moment and that kind of thing. But that um there's this interesting way that it all begins, and it has a form that you're able to kind of uh I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say here.
I
Writing is a
love being
tool.
I love being prepared. I love
Yeah.
like doing all the research and being super prepared, but then leaving room for creative play on the day of. And I kind of try to apply that to the rest of my life. Like be overly prepared, but always, always allow room to kind of
Yeah.
like see what things happen.
Oh, that's beautiful. That sounds like a really great way to live, actually. Um, so okay, I wanted to show everybody just to kind of get an idea of just how black this sort of space is.
Oh, that's one thing
So
I forgot to mention while we're going through
yeah.
this. There is a paint color that was developed, I think like 5 years ago or something, maybe more. It's called the Black is Black. And I am not very technical. I don't know what they did, but it absorbs the most color. It's the most matte, so there's no shine, there's no nothing. And I found a lot of this, and I painted almost all the figurines and all the sculptures this way. So there wouldn't be reflections, and it would kind of just be a lot of silhouettes where you almost couldn't tell whether they were 3D or 2D. But when you move around them, you're like, yes, that is 3D. Um, and so that is another reason why everything is extremely dark.
Yeah, no, I love that like you kind of you can make out shapes. It almost feels like when your eyes are starting to adjust to the dark kind of, and there's like something there, but you can't quite make out all the details. Like maybe you could just see the outline of it or something, and that you were able to capture that continuously, in 3 dimensions, I think, was really pretty fascinating. Um, so yeah, as you kind of go around the tree, you can make out some things, but some of it is really pretty hard to distinguish. And to give you all a contrast, so this is what it a
He's so cute.
section of it, what it looks like lit. So you can see, the objects, the animals, the creatures, everything that's been placed here, but which is totally different in this from what we were just looking at, just to give you all an idea. So, okay, I think now we're actually at our part for our Q&A. So if anybody has any questions for Adrien, please feel free to put those into the chat, and I will come around to field those to Adrien here in a moment. But while people are taking a second to put some questions in, Adrien, I have a few for you.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So,
Hmm.
okay, with a project like this that takes so many years to fully complete, and then, of course, here comes the museum asking you to do one more when you thought you were done. Um, but, how do you stay motivated when you're creating a body of work that demands so much from you, I imagine, both creatively, but also physically, 'cause this is so physical in nature. How were you able to stay with it, I guess?
Well, there's a couple different ways. This project was very specific that I funded this project through like community funding. So I did a Kickstarter, which I will tell anyone who is looking to do like a multi-year project. It is a good way to stay motivated because you want to honor what you promised all these people. There were different tiers, and I would send people a picture of their favorite color and all these different things. So I had to finish it. So that was one that was honestly a very good motivator. And two, there was always, if I ever kind of felt discouraged, I think there was a 6-month period where I took a break because I just either I honestly can't remember. I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 colors in. I was just feeling drained and unmotivated. But I came around. I think that in terms of motivation, I personally um, can get extremely focused on a project, and I think I'm very lucky that way. And this one also, this had a beginning, middle, and an end. I knew what it was. I knew it was a journey. I knew we were going to do one for each color, so it wasn't open ended. And I think with projects, that's also very helpful. Um, and also, I keep talking about her. I'm going to send her this talk, but Annie, the little girl, we would spend months building these concepts and da da da. And when she would come in, we'd kind of do an unveiling just for her, and it was extremely motivating because just the joy on this little girl's face when she walked in, and just like there was no way I could just stop halfway through.
That's fantastic. Yeah, um can you talk so you've mentioned her a little bit, and I don't know how much you're comfortable sharing, but what is you still obviously have a relationship with the model. Do you mind like what is that like now that she's so much older?
I mean, it's lovely. This exhibition was in New York last year. They did kind of one of those outdoor exhibitions around a park.
Yeah,
And she was in town and we went and saw it together, which was really nice.
that's amazing.
And her family's lovely. Her mom's always sending me these like wonderfully creative things that she sees that reminds her of me. And everyone thinks we're related because we look a little similar, but we're not.
Yeah.
She
Oh,
was
it's
kind of
fantastic.
supposed to be, a version of myself, not directly, but
Got it. Yeah, so a little bit of a self portrait there, somewhat. Gotcha. Oh, that's amazing. That's lovely to hear that you guys have that this created such a nice relationship for you.
yeah,
Um,
this project, I'll say one more thing, is that in terms of being motivated, this project was kind of my very first high production multi-year project. And now that's kind of how I work. I do a lot of series. And so I learned everything that I use now through a lot of trial and a lot of error. So this project is kind of like the birth of my career and my creative process and my style. It always changes a little bit with the things you're interested in and this and that. But yeah.
That's it. That's wow, that's fascinating. I kind of feel even more honored to have kind of that first start of, your direction here in the museum. What was it like then to go to kind of revisit it when we asked you to create the Black World? How was
I
that?
mean, extremely exciting,
Yeah,
because I honestly have been thinking about the Black World for a while. And then just thinking, the photos are kind of already done. How would I incorporate that into the story? Where does it fit into the storyline? And I would love being able to create it as kind of a separate entity, but also in the middle and bringing everything together. Um, this whole exhibition was extremely special for me. So
yeah.
I'm very grateful.
That's amazing. I think so. Karen actually has a question for you along those lines. So she's wondering, now that you created this Black World installation at our museum, have you considered creating a version of it and taking photographs in the same way? Which kind of leads into another question I had. You know, would would the young girl ever, do you picture her ever being here? Or is I know that she's older now, so that complicates the logistics of things. But um, is this a space that you imagine she visits or has visited?
I do. I mean, I definitely, from the second we started building it, I kept my brain immediately went to the photos and like how I would kind of reconstruct this as a set and more like two-dimensional where you're looking at it from one way. And I also thought about getting Annie back in here and doing a shoot with her as a young woman, or a woman.
Yeah.
She's in college.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. That's amazing.
Not to date myself, but yes, absolutely. I am looking forward to it, and I'm already kind of doing a little bit of, first stage brainstorming around what that might look like,
Yeah.
and what that
Yeah.
story means. I really don't know what that story means at this point in terms of the rest of the story. So I'm excited to figure that out, see where it goes. But
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Um, so there's another question that is asking, okay, so she says your pictures are imaginative and beautiful, but also incredibly labor intensive. What are the intellectual or artistic rewards for constructing your art in that way instead of using, digital shortcuts that you could take to make it easier for yourself?
yeah, I've asked myself the same question. No, I truly believe, like I said, most of my creative process lies in the experimentation and just kind of moving around something, even with lighting. A lot of my work also has to do with lighting. And I never really know where I want the light to be until I see it. And that's kind of exactly how this is. It's kind of how I connect and where, the artist in me or the creative energy in me aligns is with being hands-on, and then when things connect and light the right way and you just feel it, um I don't feel it in the same way on the screen. So yeah, it's kind of the only way that I know how to make something that feels really genuine.
Mm. Gotcha. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, which actually kind of leads into another question that I had for you, just a little more generally about AI, right? So we're living in a world now where AI is suddenly everywhere, even when we haven't maybe asked for it to be there. Um, so I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on what the potential impact of this is going to be for visual artists, but maybe also just yourself and your own work as this just sort of becomes more and more common?
Honestly, at the beginning, I was a little scared, and then I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna be mad at AI. Like, we're not in an argument. I think it's amazing for a lot of things. I think people, are playing with visuals and like, show me blah blah blah. That like, maybe they never would have before. I think it's another tool. In terms of my work, especially since I'm now kind of branching out, where before I was mostly only exhibiting photographs, and now a lot of my exhibitions are multimedia. So like this one where I have this kind of like 3D sculpture in there. Um, that's kind of part of my work, and that's not something that AI can really do. But I'm sure once I do more research, there's a way that AI could help me in some way. So I'm very much just like, it's here to stay. I don't want to like overanalyze and freak out. It is very, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not, it's very hard for every single creative profession. So we just kind of have to work at making, our own niche and just like following what you do. Because I still believe that, like I was saying, that spark that comes from, people say different words from the universe, from God, from this or that, but that like creative spark that happens is like the essence of the human soul. And AI will never have that. So I really encourage artists not to get frustrated and to just go after, you know, that extremely human emotion and connection with the creative spirit. So
Yeah, I love that. And I really like and I appreciate your perspective of, I'm not mad at AI, which I think
yeah,
it's a really,
I'm
I'm
like,
gonna hang on to that.
I didn't say anything bad
I'm
about
a
you, AI. I promise. Go for it.
right. I feel like some of us may need to say that to ourselves as time
Yeah.
goes on. So I appreciate it. There's one more question I have for you in the chat. So, did you have a favorite color to create a world around, or were there any colors that stood out to you during the creation process?
Honestly, not really. I loved, and I got really, even subconsciously, into every color. And to the point where, purple was kind of towards the end. And I came to one day and I had like purple nail polish and I was wearing like purple pants. And I was not really paying attention. I just kind of dove into every color. And it was such a wonderful, kind of like pure experience to create this project. So I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe yellow because we brought in all these sunflowers and it was just I honestly don't know. It's not a good answer, but I fell in love with each color separately.
Yeah,
So yeah, it
that
was
makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you probably like have so many connections to each of them for different reasons that are not the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think just personally, one of my favorites is the yellow too. Thought it was funny you said that. And I also maybe the same reason because I just love that yellow field of sunflowers that is sort
Yeah.
of implied, even though it feels really real, even though I know it's not. But and I think I've said before, I want to just run through that
Yeah.
sunflower field if I could.
Me too.
Yeah. Um, well, I think that's it. We don't have any other questions that I can see anywhere, and I think you've answered. Oh, wait, I have one last one. One last one. We'll do it super quick, because I like to ask this question. But is there anything that surprised you or that was completely unexpected to you when you were working on this project?
I think honestly, the amount of people that just wanted to help. I did have those two assistants that helped me throughout, but people would message me and be like, I would love to come in and just, play. If you ever need anyone to like cut leaves, you ever need this or that or this or that. And so I would call it Arts and Crafts Day. And when, we had like a big installer, we needed a lot of props made, I would just kind of put it out to the community that was following my work. And I was always shocked. I was like, you really want to come in and like cut out leaves for 4 hours? Awesome. So that was a big surprise to me. And like that was really wonderful. So that was a big surprise. Yeah, that was probably it.
Yeah, that is really nice. The community that sort of like
Yeah, people just need a
rallied around
creative
you.
outlet sometimes, and they don't. It was just really wonderful. And it was a good reminder how lucky I am that like somehow I'm doing this as a living and I forget, sometimes, people go to an office every day and they really just want like a hands-on creative project. And I was really grateful to all of them.
Absolutely. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been so amazing hearing from you and getting to like ask you all of the kind of questions that have been percolating in my mind for the past couple of months. And we've all just had such a wonderful time connecting our audiences to your work. And uh, the reception has just been fantastic to watch. So thank you so much. And we are going to miss your tree as well when it's gone. We'll do something to kind of commemorate.
Yes.
Um, but thank you so much to everybody for joining us today.
Thank you all.
If you're close enough to see the exhibit, I please do come by. You do have a little bit of time. It will close on August 10th is the last day will be open to you to view. Um, and so, yeah, and if you're in the area, also the day before, August 9th, will be our big spotlight event where we're going to spotlight the exhibition and have a lot of activities and live music. It'll be a really fun event to celebrate Adrien's work here in the museum. But thank you so much, everybody. Have a really great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.